Welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically, the podcast that talks about the good, bad, ugly, and awesome. Careers, life transitions, confidence, and everything in between. Because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone.
If you have ever looked at your calendar and thought, where did I go? I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. Welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically. My name is Jessica Cumming. Today's guest knows exactly how that feels. Ann Potts spent years checking all the boxes, the career, the responsibilities, the busy life that looks successful on paper. But somewhere in the middle of doing it all for everyone else, she realized she was the one that was running on empty. Now Ann is leading a powerful movement to fight the stress epidemic so many women silently endure. Through her 16-week program, she helps women shift from overwhelmed to reconnected and recharged, using fun as a vehicle to come back home to themselves. Today, she's sharing not only what she does, but why it matters, and why fun isn't frivolous, it's foundational. Ann, thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically.
Thanks for having me, Jessica. I'm glad to be able to connect with you on this important topic.
It really is. When we first connected, I thought, how great is this? We always talk about fun, but we don't necessarily do it. You are giving women permission to have fun again in their lives. Why don't you tell me about you, your story, and what led you on this phenomenal journey?
No, absolutely. Thanks. 30-year career in strategic communications. So I've done a lot of PR, a lot of messaging, media relations, helping people tell their story and address audiences, and I've loved it. It's also a very highly ranked career when it comes to stress levels. So I have been, for all of these years, not constantly, but often, high stress. So every year those stats would come out, it would be PR and first responders and ER docs. And I'd always think, really? And now, upon reflection, I can say, yeah, really, for a lot of people, it's really the case. Now, so many of our occupations are a stress zone for so many people, from teachers to librarians now. I mean, it's just all over the place, and really a problem that so many of us shoulder. So as I've developed this program, I've done a lot of reflection on my own experience, and so much of my career was just unbelievably great. I've been at the table with innovators who have created technologies that now are second nature to us. But when I was learning about them and scribbling in my notebook, nobody knew about them yet. And that's just a fabulous moment to share with an innovator. But looking back, the impact on my own rhythm of life when work is really consuming, it can really take its toll on other aspects. I have flashbacks of standing in my kitchen with two adorable kids who just wanted to talk, and I was already empty from the day, knowing the kind of mom I wanted to be and knowing where I wanted to land, but not finding the resources available to me after the long workday and a commute, and thinking about what I needed to email my boss before going to bed. It was really too much. So now when I think about the numbers of women who are in that same lane, and the stats are crazy. So a year ago, the number was a third of American women almost always feeling burned out, which is crazy high. Now that's grown to 2/3, which is just not anything that any of us who live in this moment find unimaginable, but we should find it unacceptable. So I started to hear myself and my own responses to what I had experienced and what I see others experiencing. How can I contribute to helping women be in a better place? And one thing I realized as I thought about my career is there's a lot of talk in communications and advertising about brand campaigns and what kind of brand you care about. I love a good campaign. I'm just like anybody else, and probably more PR people are a little susceptible to messaging, even though we're the ones who craft it. But what I found when I was in those conversations, I actually found the answer kind of challenging, because I always cared about the people behind it. I wanted to know how the work got done. It's the people part of my career that I always enjoyed the most, mentoring and helping folks see how they can step into their own power and tell their own story. So when I kind of came to the arrival point that I wanted to bring a coaching answer to the stress epidemic by bringing fun forward, I realized that I've actually been a coach for a really long time. I've just been practicing it in a different kind of setting. So to answer this challenge, I've created an innovative tool set, but really just thinking, how can we tell ourselves a better story? And how can we lean into a more complete life story as women? Because I just want all of us, when we're 75, 85, or however long we're going to live, to look back and say, yeah, we left it all on the field. We nailed it. We didn't get stuck on all of the shoulds and all the other kind of mind games that right now are being evidenced by these high stress levels. And some very real systemic problems, which of course is absolutely true. So I'm just focusing on the one little bit that women can control for themselves, and in the meantime, enjoy their lives better, which is a nice outcome.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we always talk about for everyone else, we can tell them what to do, but we can tell them to go have fun. But when it comes to ourselves, we just don't always necessarily take the time. And we are always putting up this facade that we're strong, we can handle everything, we've got it. I know the statistics on burnout, but now they're even calling that in-between stage, even before they hit burnout, part of an epidemic. It is your body's last resort of saying, I need help, you need to do something quickly. Can you talk about how this is different? Because I think a lot of women may just think, well, this is self-care. But we know that fun is so much more than just self-care.
Right. Yeah, that's been a knot that I've looked to untie here, because so much of what we hear as women is self-care is the number one goal. Self-care is defined as meeting your mental and physical health needs. It's just the baseline. So marketing comes to bear, and it's like the best possible essential oil, bubble bath, and all the things that are great. Please keep doing them. But it's not an arrival point. These are all means to an end, and the end is a fulfilling life. I often think of how we as women are kind of taught or encouraged to embrace self-care. Thinking about a football player cashing out of the game because of a twisted knee and the trainer taping up the player, and then you're back in the field. And that's not the answer. And it's clearly not working. Even if we were addressing our self-care needs, which we're not to the extent that we need to, it just isn't the answer.
I am a football fan, so I truly appreciate you appreciate the analogy.
So the message that I want to bring is absolutely meet your self-care needs. That's just the basics. That's mental and physical health. That's the only way that you're going to sustain yourself and be here for your family and your loved ones and your community and all the things that you're looking to achieve in life. That is your absolute responsibility. And then once you've achieved that strong foundation, then you can grow. And that's where fun is. I think we talked about permission earlier, the whole idea of like, can I even do this? Like, it's about, and I'm here to like prop everyone else up. I came up with kind of a new label for that orientation, and I refer to that mindset as the chief activity officer. So it's like figuring out how everybody else can have their great time, be it architecting a wonderful mix of summer camps for kids, which is terrific and great to have kids have a lot of different exposure. But we, I think, take it maybe a little far, and it becomes like a hobby to use our management and problem solving and strategic brains to like dive into these kinds of perfect Jenga game of how do we architect everybody else's lives. I think about people who are caregivers for elders and the real demands of that, and how much time you can spend trying to think of like, what's an ideal restaurant to take my mom where the noise won't be so high and there will be food options that she'll like. All that's important work. I just wonder, and it is a wondering because I never want to sound like I'm judging anyone, but it is a wondering if we're pouring so much in there and sort of expanding the job beyond what's actually required. And as you said, we never turn the camera back on ourselves. So I think about other ways that women take it kind of far. It's like, it's a vacation, but it's food planning, logistics, worrying whether the activity planned will appeal to everybody, kid wrangling, and all the things. Often these are the dynamics that we find ourselves in. The vacation for us ends up being hopefully fun times and we can enjoy it. But is it really refurbishing, and is it really like giving us that deep rest and reconnection that we need in order to head back to normal life? I'm not sure it's always hitting the mark.
There's times where we go on vacation, and a lot of times we come back and we're like, I need a vacation from
Exactly,
vacation. Yeah. And that's why, because we put so much of ourselves into doing something for everyone else and still trying to meet the demands for work that either we have to get done before we go, or we want to get done so that way when we get back, we're not bombarded. I just recently took some time off, and I had worked super, super hard, long hours, entire Mother's Day weekend, 12 to 14 hour days. I did it because I wanted to take a time off. But I didn't want anyone to know I was getting everything prepared to keep functioning. And then I thought about it, and I thought, I talk to women on a weekly basis in this podcast through my coaching clients. I'm talking to them about all of these different things that we need to do and making sure that you're putting yourself first. I've mentioned this in other podcasts, but you can't lead if you're always following. So once I hit that realization for myself, I made the decision that not only was I going to take time for vacation, but that I was going to bake in an extra week. What that meant is I said for 2 weeks, I was not going to have new podcast episodes. I wasn't sending out emails. I was not responding to social media. I had to go have fun. I needed to step away, and I needed to be able to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk and say, it's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to have fun. It's okay if some balls drop. For us to try to keep every single ball in the air, it's impossible. Figure out what you can put off, what you can push out, what really needs your attention. You're always going to have people that may be disappointed, but the truth of the matter is that they're going to be even more disappointed if you're not around.
Exactly.
And I think that may sound morbid, but it's the truth. We can't do anything if we're not here. And the caregiving portion of that, I get that. I was the sole caregiver for my grandmother for 14 months and worked 40 to 60 hours a week, depending on the week. You put so much of yourself into caregiving, making sure that they are up in the morning, dressed, have their food. Hopefully you didn't have to be changing bed sheets, but that's the reality of it too. And then constantly checking in on them as we're trying to get our work done through the day. That resonated with me. And I do remember it's like, okay, where are we going to go? What time can we get there? Is she going to be comfortable? Are we going to be able to get her in the van? Or do we need to get someone to help us? Then all of a sudden, if the plan changed, that was a big deal. If I had to stay behind because of work, then she was disappointed. But I knew you had to balance me still being able to be there and care for her.
Yeah.
For any of the women out there that are like, okay, I know I need to have fun. I'm hearing your conversation. I want to have fun. I just don't know what that means anymore. How do I do it?
Right.
Do you have any?
One of the things that I always want to be cautious about when I'm talking about fun in this way, I like to say, I'm from New England. I'm very practical. I've worked in the technology space. I get the pressure and I get all of the things that we face, both on the home front and the constant Slack pinging. So I'm not talking about reconfiguring your life. I jokingly say it's not about eat, pray, loving your life. you're building a life that you like, hopefully, and you like your partner and you're happy with your family. What I am encouraging people to do is to sort of carry fun as a battery pack. If you can get to the point where you're finding fun in the everyday, then terrific. That's like the ultimate arrival point. Self-care is the fundamentals. The next stage is, do you have stuff that you're looking forward to? Is there something that you can see on your calendar that is by your design, where you pick the people who join you or exclude people very much on purpose, so that you are the star of that show? One example that I could share is this past weekend, I did wicked hard jobs, and it was raining, and I got like messy, and it was stuff that I had been procrastinating, stuff I really didn't want to do. I felt good having done it. It was scrubbing windows and other things that are just not high on anybody's list. So I did that this weekend without any resentment. I felt good about it. There's a sense of pride in a job well done. That's what keeps us in the productivity mode, I realized. The weekend before that, I did amazing things. I was the star of my own show for the full day on Sunday. I did this crazy art class that was super fun. And then I went to a session where I learned about crystals, which I really don't know anything about. I went to a cafe that I really like, that no one else likes, and it's sort of vegetarian. And I had my ideal meal. And I just, the whole time, I felt like I couldn't stop smiling. That created a battery pack for me. So then I went into a week where I worked very hard. I was at my desk for hours at a time. I did that horrendous set of jobs on Saturday, and I don't feel cheated. So that's just like a little micro example of how that, once you have that experience, and it does matter that it's in your daily life, and that you're not banking it for vacation. There's actually like some psychological studies about that. It needs to be something that's part of your world, that is about you and what you find fulfilling. One of the things I'm also cautious to do is not try to give people a menu for fun. We're all super individualized. So what I really want through this work is for women to connect with that part of themselves, so that they're really clear what they like to do and where they might experiment and what they might try, because there's so much opportunity. The world is huge, and we're so advantaged here that there's a lot that's possible. But we have to decide that we can do that. As you were saying with your grandmother, like, how do you delegate? How do you decide that you're not going to do something so that you clear space? I think a lot of us would say, yeah, I've got something like that. So, that's the place where I'm quite convinced we can arrive. We need to figure out how we make peace with that and create new mechanisms in our life so that we can enjoy where we are that much more.
Yeah, I know a lot of women out there will be thinking that's me. I've wanted to do this for 5 years. I wanted to do this for 10 years. And all of a sudden, they're older and they still haven't
Yeah,
done it. And it's almost like the time goes by so slowly, and then all of a sudden it's
yeah,
gone. So, for someone that is looking at putting something on their calendar, as you mentioned, and I understand that everyone is a unique individual with this, but how often do you suggest that they look at injecting a little bit more
yeah. I mean,
fun?
I think a good starting point is once a month. The pace of life really does demand that. But with making a commitment to yourself, I think taking it seriously is once a month. If you stretched every 6 weeks, that's all right. But the need is so real, and the opportunity is so great. I mean, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is it's not hard to justify, actually, from a strategic standpoint. There's a wonderful and super rare study out of Pittsburgh that the group that they recruited for this study was 75% female, which that's like zero research unless it's about breast cancer really does that kind of number. So what the finding was, to sort of medicalize all the language, was that varied activities, leisure activities, which I'll call fun, but a variety of them, make a difference on fighting stress, and they measured it clinically. So they found a dive in cortisol levels for this group of women. And that's what's magnificent about us as individuals. So if that productivity kind of weight is always on you and the to-do list is the only thing you're focused on, it's coming out. You're showing up like that. You talk about work all the time. Or when you're at a dinner party or a gathering, a family gathering, do you have anything to talk about that's not your kids or your dog or your work? I think a lot of people find themselves in that position. And that's just not a great place for your heart to be. Like, that doesn't feel good. And when that shift happens, you're just more magnetic. And lots of things can happen when you're more magnetic.
Absolutely. So, for the women that and men that are listening out there that may not really know that much about cortisol and the negative impacts that it can have on your body, talk a little bit about how it impacts
Yeah, so
us.
I'm not a medical expert, but it's worth people looking it up. It is a stress hormone. So it's your body's response to stress. And when you're in stress, you're just staying in fight or flight, which is just a terrible place to put your body. This is a problem that's unfortunately universal. The loneliness epidemic is striking everyone. There's so many things that are happening to us, and we can change this ourselves. We really can, by dialing into what we actually need, dialing up community and greater connection, all of which has both physiological benefit and that spirit and soul benefit. And like I said, it makes you more effective overall.
Yeah, and this has come up in previous episodes recently as well with some other guests, but we are finding that women are creating these
Yeah.
spaces for one another. We are really starting to lead the charge when it comes to saying it's okay to talk about, it is okay to have the conversation, it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to grow a community. And a lot of times men are still afraid to open
Yeah.
up about it. They're afraid to have those conversations. So I'm glad that you mentioned that this is something that men need to look at doing as well as just, yes, they still need to do the self care, but they still need to look at having
Yeah.
fun if they're not. I do think that when it comes to the numbers, though, disproportionately, women are the ones that are the caregivers for the
Yeah.
elderly, taking care of the children in addition to working. And so a lot of times we say, I'll stay behind, I'll take care of everything. You go play golf, have fun, go to the baseball game, go to the football game, go to the cigar bar. You go and I'll stay. We need that alone time. We need to make sure as women we are giving ourselves the permission. And one thing we need to understand is we have the permission.
Yes.
You don't need someone else to give you the permission.
That's right.
Can you tell me, how did you decide that fun, this is what you wanted to
Yeah.
do, and how did you come up with your program that you're doing
Yeah,
now?
no, I'm glad to. So I am a person with a lot of interests. As I talked about my work life, I shouldered a lot of stress. I also really tried to put some clear boundaries on things. We had this unbelievable trip out west a number of years ago off my phone. I deleted all the work apps. I had a terrific team, and I knew I could count on them, and trusted contacts that if something was going down, I knew they would call. I needed to give myself that separation because I understand everything that I know and am implementing now. I showed up to this work feeling many layers of what exhibits as burnout, even having some pretty good boundaries in place and some beliefs that sustained me, even in the kind of thunderstormy work that I had. While I was in that mode, I had this experience where I was standing in the kitchen. My kids were little. And it was about this time of year. Summer was about to start, and they were talking about all the camps and all the things that they were going to do. That chief activity officer had been really engaged. And I felt heavy and like mad. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I have all these trips this summer to places I don't want to spend my summer in. and it was all client work and all sorts of stuff. And I live by the shore. I want to be here. And I wasn't going to be here. And so I said out loud to my two little kids, it's my summer too. And they looked at me like, of course it is, and they just went along. And the audience for that message was me, that I knew that I needed to be able to do something different. And so from there, I did something audacious. I architected my own 3-day summer camp, and I Googled quickly. The universe was on my side. There were a lot of opportunities for me to do things that I had been wanting to do. And it was unbelievable. And now it's many years later, and that's still part of my battery pack as I go forward. But it was the decision to try something and to do what I'm prescribing for women now, to plug into what I wanted. I went off and did it by myself. I sailed in Boston Harbor by myself with an instructor to try to reconnect with my sailing skills, which I had left behind for years. And it was awesome. I was darting in between natural gas tankers. It was an amazing experience. And see how lit up I am still thinking about that. So I carried that into this, and I thought there's a continuum. You start to feel kind of iffy, and then you head straight over to burnout. Burnout being something that needs medical attention generally and years of recovery. So I thought, what's in between to intervene along that trajectory? And I thought, what is the tool that we can all grab? Because everybody has had fun at some level in their lives. Even if the last time you can remember it was when you were a kid, you can connect and understand what that feeling is. I thought, what if we elevate that as the intervention here? Because it has all the benefits that we've already talked about. There's actual physiological benefits. It's achievable. It's going to be something that you're going to enjoy, even on the most basic level. Like, what do you actually want? If you think about time, which is limited, when are you going to do it? And you got to act. And you got to take some sort of forward motion there, because that window will close, and I just don't want anyone to have regrets later. Like I said earlier, I want the old lady that we'll all become to look back and think, yeah, she nailed it. She did that improv and hated it or whatever, but she tried it. That's the feeling that is such an effective counterbalance to stress, and it is that battery pack that helps us do so much more. So that's how I landed on fun. I've talked to many women as I've been developing this program, and I realized that we need help first with self-care, as we talked about. We need help with understanding how we talk to ourselves and how we see ourselves relative to the various titles that we hold and the responsibilities that we shoulder. Again, not eat, pray, loving anything, but what's our relationship with those ideas and with the communities that we're serving? Women spend 200 extra hours at work every year on promotable tasks, and they're doing all that work and it doesn't lead to promotion. So 200 extra hours that get you nowhere and keep you away from your home, your garden. We're doing things that lead up to choices that we can make that could be different. Who am I? And what do I actually want? So that values alignment. And then how do you make it happen? You talked about delegation and, what do you cancel? What do you potentially disappoint people with? That's all stuff that we need to practice. Life is going to happen. Your mom's going to go to the hospital. You're going to have 75 work travel days stack up. I want this to be sustained change. So that's why it is a longer program. This is not a 2-week deep dive that, at the end it's go with God. I really want women to understand that as they travel through life, which is a changing environment, that they can come back to a better baseline for themselves, not the first place on the game board. How do they make it so that this becomes a habit and an expectation and understanding, just like many of us have for exercise, or the understanding that we have to eat the colors of the rainbow on our plate. The patterns that we have fallen into are very recent. This is not how women have always been. We've always worked hard. We've always shouldered a lot of responsibility. But the way that we don't serve ourselves to the extent that is true now in a certain strata of society, it is a pretty recent phenomenon. So we can change, we can make different decisions.
Yeah. So the women that are looking at working more than men, a lot of times we feel as though we need to work harder, we need to work longer hours, we need to take on more in order to prove that we
Yeah.
are worthy. But the reality of it is that when we work longer hours, oftentimes women are seen as not being capable of doing it in a shorter amount of time. And so we're actually doing ourselves a disservice, not only personally, but also
Yeah.
professionally when we work those longer hours. And so that's one thing that women need to really take a step back and look at and say, okay, to your point, who is this benefiting? How is this going to benefit me in the long run? And it's okay to be
Yeah.
selfish.
If every meeting you're going into, your heart rate is accelerated and your shoulders are by your ears, understand that your body is telling you something that you have to pay attention to. A
Absolutely.
whole different layer of awareness that we're just not well trained on. And the expectation is that we won't pay attention to ourselves. And that just, it's not right. It's not serving us.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're looking at putting fun on the calendar, you had mentioned it earlier, is have something that you're going to look forward to. But, I would also encourage women to physically put it on your
Absolutely.
calendar and treat it as the most important meeting you will have that
Yeah,
week.
that's right.
Because women are starting this if they want to start slow. Once you've already achieved that level of self care, now you're looking at adding fun. What is a reasonable amount to start
Well,
at?
there's a lot of different kind of modes, right? So I think about kind of the where does an hour refurbish, which it can. Where do 3 hours refurbish you? And where does maybe a day? And frankly, kind of nets out to what your caregiving responsibilities are. Some people have more elastic and expansive work schedules, but if you're a Monday through Friday worker, a day can be hard to take. But it's about being intentional. Right. So, one of the concepts of the artist's way is the artist date, and it's about building creativity, but it's a more universal set of lessons. The artist date is committing to making an allotment of time for yourself. And so let's start with an hour. How can you think, okay, I am going to block this hour. Everybody is going to know. I'm not going to the grocery store on the way. I am not picking up the dog from the groomer on the way home. Nothing like that. It's not doing something consumptive. It's something that's building for you. So for me, an example that a lot of people use in my area is taking a walk on the beach, or the podcast that you love that you never get to really focus on. Take that hour, and it's not exercise. It can be, but take the hour and be in nature, be somewhere beautiful. That is a great place to start, and a nice little step up from self-care, because being in nature and all that stuff really pays off. You could go to a record store and just flip through the various albums. But there's a variety of ways to spend an hour like that. I did Artist's Way at a local arts community in my town, and I was in full go mode, running from the train to get to these classes. I showed up, and it's a bunch of women in their 60s who could give a damn about anything. I'm in my corporate costume, trying to unwind. The contrast was just so amazing when I look back. It was a great experience for me, and I loved being among them. One of them was a playwright. Another woman was an adjunct professor at a local college. It was awesome. It just an interruption in my normal world. When I talk about fun, the ultimate arrival point is flow. where you're unaware of time. And I think for many, walking on the beach or being on a beautiful trail or looking at something natural can really do that to you, where it's an immersive experience, even if it's only for an hour, and you're unaware of how quickly time is passing. Flow has a lot of different other benefits, and that's when I'm talking about being magnetic. When you get to flow, it just really charges you up on that level. And it's the flow that I'm remembering from being on Boston Harbor. I was thinking about, how am I going to get away from that tanker? I wasn't thinking about what was going to happen later that day. I was completely in the moment. And I've yielded so many benefits over the years from just having that one singular experience. An hour of time, how can you use it? And what is going to be refurbishing for you? 3 hours, maybe a little bit more achievable. Maybe that's a Saturday afternoon after the flurry of the morning is over. For me, I look around and see what are some local events that nobody in my family wants to do, but maybe my best friend wants to go with me. And how do you say, I'm going to go and do that, and make that promise to yourself? As you said, Jessica, it's about that commitment. But make that promise to yourself and say, this talk on Thomas Jefferson is only happening on Saturday at the Historical Society. I really want to go. I've never been able to go to any of their events. I'm going to do that. It's really important that we start where we can achieve something. Not thinking, oh my gosh, I've always wanted throw pots, and so I want to take a pottery class. Oh my goodness, I can't, or it's too expensive, or the schedule doesn't work for me. And then we decide, oh well, that's it then. We fall into the trap of what's the ultimate. And that's why I don't like the use of the bucket list and stuff like that, because it plays into the like, oh, well, I guess I can't. We're going to get to that knee-jerk reaction so fast that when we're starting, just make it easy on yourself. Fall into ease. Make the commitment. Go off and do it. See how it feels. And then see what you need next time. One of the things that I would say is explain to your family why you're doing it. Say, this is what mom needs. This is what I need. I want to do this. Because what do you want your kids to understand about women in the world? What are you exhibiting for them? What's the example that they're getting? You're awesome in so many ways. Let's be awesome in this way too, where they can see that you're a human and that battery pack needs to be recharged. And they're going to really celebrate you for it. It's a really nice landing place for your community and your family to see you.
I think that's really important. And the example that you're setting now for your children is how they are going to grow up and look at the
Yeah.
world. So if you are not taking that time, they may not necessarily take that
Right.
time. Do not apologize for it. Own it.
Right.
This is your time. It is a boundary that you are putting in place. And sometimes that's really scary
Yeah.
too, is to try to set those boundaries. And they will slip. Anytime you start a boundary and it's something new and people aren't used to it, either you're going to slip and or they're going to push that
Totally.
boundary because that's what you've been known for. So by continuously practicing this, and I know you use it in different contexts, but flow. If you can get into a flow of having this happen repeatedly, month over month or every 6 weeks or whatever feels comfortable for you at first, if you can get into that routine with it, like exercise, it makes it a little bit
Right.
easier. You get used to doing it. Treat it like a meeting and be okay saying, this is what I'm going
Right.
to do.
Absolutely.
Own it.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing is we don't always own it. We don't always stand up for ourselves.
We would tell anybody that we see as a sister, as a friend, as anything. We would be the first one to say, you go and do that. We're ready to cheer someone else on, but we don't do it. And this is something that's been true for forever, I guess. But, now things are just that much more challenging. When I had my second job out of college, it was for a management consulting firm, like a high-end place. And my boss's boss was at the C-suite in this company. It was just incredible to be able to have access to somebody like that. I learned a ton. The rhythm of work then write the memo, send the memo, wait 2 weeks for the response. And now, if you miss a Slack message by 35 seconds, everyone thinks you run off and join the circus. So that's a big shift in probably 30 years. The formula needs to shift alongside that.
Yeah, it really does. We are in such a world of instant gratification that we don't always want to take the time to have fun because it takes too long.
Right.
Enjoy yourself for a few minutes, but it sometimes almost seems like too much work for someone to have
Yeah.
fun.
Well,
And
also with like
that's, I
Netflix
think,
just waiting for you, or the latest housewife situation,
yes.
there's a real counter pressure that we need to recognize too. And that's all, to me, in the zone of numbing out. We need rest, 100 million%. Like, couldn't agree more with that, obviously. But then, there's a lot of the very common conversation. I know you're in a music town, but, a lot of people say, oh, I love seeing live music, but I don't get out to see it all that much because all of the stuff is right at our fingertips. We can watch The White Lotus so easily, and it's really entertaining, and that's great. But then we're missing out on a million different sensory inputs that are hugely beneficial to us, and obviously having fun. So there's all of that too.
Being in a music town, there's always something going on here. But I have noticed, and I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but I'm almost to the point where I don't want to go as much.
All right.
And not only is there so many people, but the way that people interact has changed so much that I would almost rather not go because there's a lot of real not so nice people.
Right. So let's take that as an example of values, right? So that might have been something that you did value, that it was an important thing. I really want to be in bed by 10. So the idea of trucking off to see a band that might come on at 11, no, that's not going to be fun for me because I'm going to be tired. And I love music and I love all this stuff, but that doesn't really fit my value set right now because I'm not 22 anymore. Yeah. So how do I meet the need without compromising? So it sounds to me that being in that environment is full of compromises for you, and it isn't where you want to be. So that's okay. And so making peace with that and saying, that's cool. Everybody else can enjoy that. I'm going to do something else over here, but don't leave it unfilled. I think once we can shed things, and we should understand and stay in touch with ourselves as to what we want and what we can do, but to figure out something else that you like and go and do that. Find early shows or outdoor stuff that you don't have to bump into people so much. A friend of mine has an album release party happening last Saturday of the month. The show is at 4:00 in the afternoon. Everyone's like, thank you so much for making it early. And the guy who's in the band, he was like, yeah, I figured this would be more appealing to people. In bed by 10.
Exactly. So we actually have a doormat that says, be our guest, but leave by 9. I value my sleep, a bit of quiet time at the end of the night. And it doesn't always happen. Not everyone always leaves by 9. But as we're talking about these earlier things that are happening, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, they are doing a comedy show. And it starts at 8:00, maybe even earlier than that. They did that on purpose. I've also seen clubs or bars that are opening up earlier and then close by 10.
And the daybreak dancing is another awesome thing. Yeah, no, I love that. I love it because it opens up the opportunity for so many more people. And this is stuff that different cultures get better than we do. In the U.S., you might think, I'm a little too old for that. And Europe really does embrace more cross-generational. It's the grandparents are dancing in the square alongside everybody else. I just love that. So let's open up the opportunity more. And the market is there. People do want to buy the ticket at 6:00 because we're not alone wanting to be in bed by 10.
Absolutely.
So it's nice actually responding to some of these value shifts.
I agree. And I think that part of it is because we do have social media. We have people that are voicing their opinions about this. We are learning more, hopefully, from some of the other countries. Because I can tell you, I mean, I've spent time in various different countries, but, you know, when I look back to Panama, it would be a long lunch. It would be a
Yes.
relaxed lunch.
Oh,
It wasn't as strict as some of the other countries that I've been in. It's just you have that afternoon nap time after lunch. You break up the day. And there's something to be said for that too, because I really think that helps prevent burnout, or not necessarily prevent burnout, but it holds it off a little bit longer
I would imagine. Yeah.
because we are giving ourselves constant breaks versus just pushing
Right.
through. And that's just what we have been taught. And it is hard to unlearn.
Yeah.
But the reality is, for our own mental, physical, emotional well being, it's time to unlearn those things. And it's time to say, it's okay, I'm putting myself
Right.
first.
Yeah. It just is. Belief is that when we're talking about something as tangible or achievable as fun, that could make it that much easier.
Absolutely.
That's the goal, that,
Yeah.
that we'll all be having much more fun and be healthier, more magnetic, and more centered, and all the good things.
Absolutely. Well, Anne, as we look at wrapping up our time today, do you have any other thoughts or last minute words of advice for our listeners out there?
Yeah, I think it's just important to start. Summer is a great time. That's when there is an expectation that you're going to have a long weekend, at least in the summer. Hopefully, you have some vacation planned. But the call to action that I would have is, don't bank on vacation to solve all your issues. Build in, while the days are long, where it's possible to do more. Try to carve out the time, like we talked about, in a 1 hour increment, in a 3 hour increment, so that you do get what you want. Be the ripple that brings other people into a different rhythm of life. And it really can start with you talking about taking a beach walk for an hour, or that trail walk, or visiting a record store. Tell those stories to other people so that they can start to see, oh my goodness, this is a possibility.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
me today.
Jessica.
I truly appreciate it. And for all of the listeners and watchers out there, if this resonated with you, like, tag, share it with a friend. Let's start a conversation about what fun is, what fun can look like, and how we can all achieve more fun in our lives. Until next time, stay fierce, stay bold, but most importantly, stay unapologetically you.